Morning, everybody. Very nice to see everybody on this Unity morning. Unity is a green tea. It's from Anhui Province. Some of you are thinking, he must have been in a rush when they set this up, because 3 consecutive weeks from Anhui Province. Oh no, it was 3 consecutive weeks from Anhui Province. That was purposeful, because typically in America, when we say, oh yeah, tea is from Fujian province, red tea, we get a picture in our heads, right? Because we've had experience, or from the Wuyi Mountains. We've had lots of experience. However, in that experience, what do we find? Great variation. And that's what you're meant to see in the green tea, because so many people in the general tea drinking public, which is not you, by the way, you're not in the general tea drinking public, you're in the elite tea drinking public. But so many people in the general tea drinking public believe the following statement: green tea, it's all about the same. Not true. Not true at all. Okay, so let's position ourselves in terms of where in Anhui Province Unity is. Because you remember, during this 3-set session, we've had Whirlpool, Bulwark, and now Unity. One of those was high in the mountains, planted by re-educated youth, left, and then refound. Whirlpool. Bulwark, in another part of the Yellow Mountains, not so far away from Tunxi, which is a famous museum village in Anhui Province. How about Unity? Is it in the same neighborhood? Well, if we define neighborhood as province, oh yes. If we define neighborhood as within the same 50 miles, oh no. It is south of the Yellow Mountains, and it bridges one of those transition places called Shirtai, between really belonging to Yellow Mountain area and then the Chiman area. So why isn't this darn thing red if it's snuck into the Chiman area? Let's go back and do some history. So remembering that some year, let's pick a year. Let's say pre-1570. And I just picked that year. I don't know the exact precise minute, second, nanosecond that red tea was discovered. Maybe it was discovered even earlier. This is a processing methodology, obviously, and then lost. All of these things are possible. But really, by the end of the 1600s, yeah, we know what red tea is. We know the Sung Loa process. I talked to you all about that last week. That's where we pick off the tips of the leaves, pick off those annoying stems. Why are we doing that? We're doing that so we get uniformity of processing. In other words, when you fry, it's going to be a uniform product. Now, over time, all of this morphed, didn't it? So we developed the Chinese developed other methodologies. They developed more refinements, remembering that Unity is in an area where there were lots of refinements. Let's step back in history one more time. Was Unity a plant that existed say 1,000 years ago? Answer is yes, it did exist. Had it come to the imperial notice? Oh, double yes. They liked tea from this area. There wasn't much, but they liked tea from this area. So it was grown as green, processed in the traditional way, making a cake, and then consumed in a traditional way, almost like matcha. And then all of that changed as you rolled into the Sung Dynasty, where instead of steaming, what are we doing? We're frying. And that continued all the way up to today. So let's think about what it is that makes Unity special. It's a good taste, obviously. We don't bring anything here without a great taste. However, there's something else. It's got additional alleged putative health benefits. Why? The soil that this grows in. And by the way, the Chinese grokked this very early, is heavy in selenium. Naturally, of course, occurring selenium. This isn't selenium fertilizer. You know such a thing exists, I'm sure. This is not that. It exists in this area. So one of you is formulating the question, so I'm going to shortcut it. What are the benefits of selenium? Now, remembering, I'm not a researcher, a doctor, or anybody except an understudy. Here's what I will tell you. Selenium is alleged to boost the immune system. And actually, the Chinese had an idea about this a long time ago because they noticed certain alleged benefits from drinking this tea. So does it affect the flavor profile? As far as I know, no, it does not really affect the flavor profile. There must be some effect, whatever it is. I don't understand that effect. And I've never seen any literature about that. But I have seen plenty of literature about researchers in China talking about selenium and green tea together as something extremely healthy, allegedly healthy for the immune system. So this occurs naturally. In a minute, you'll see the flavor, see whether you can tolerate that. By the way, where else is a big old natural source of selenium aside from a nutraceutical? How about a Brazil nut? Those are very rich in selenium as well. Okay, so we've got location. It's different than the last 2 weeks. We have pedigree. In some ways, this pedigree goes back a long way. So that's good. Imperial dynasties appreciated this tea from a flavor perspective. And now we have today where it is still processed as a green tea, even though it borders the Chima needle production area. So what height, what elevation, not height, what elevation are we at? Typically, we're anywhere from 1,000 feet above sea level, at the highest to about 4,200 feet above sea level. Is there anything else about this terroir or about this terrain that I should note to you? Oh, indeed there is. It's foggy a lot of the year. Lots of watershed running through this area. Historically, not much development of this area. So the result is little or no pollution. There hasn't been artificial fertilizer used in this area because the natural acidity of the soil combined with the nutrients in the soil has produced this rich tea. So it's really an interesting place in terms of a green tea. And that's why we stayed in Anhui. Yeah, I know. It's boring to stay in the same province 3 consecutive weeks, but not when you get 3 different taste looks. You know what? Usually I talk ad infinitum and don't have the tea master come up here. But you know what? I'm thinking of having the tea master come up here very shortly so that she'll demonstrate the brewing, and then you'll have a chance to brew along, and we'll give ourselves a little bit of time to think about what you're tasting, to think about what you're smelling. And you tell me, out of these 3 Anhui teas, where are you? So it is a great pleasure to bring up the blue and red outfitted tea master to demonstrate unity.
Hey, good morning. 早上好. We do green tea, so unity. So this is somebody like the best taste. I think we same page, we same standard. Okay. So, but today now I use the 4 so marks. So I learned so many things, in Japan. So it's really very important, the for green tea, the way to dissipate steam first. So this is very important. So basically, we do first, okay? So same, I use the 4, but in Japan, they use the 4 too.
That's a good point.
4 balls.
Yeah, so this will reveal a little bit more about the trip to Japan. One of the things we saw at the top places where they're doing tea ceremony is much like us. They have several brewing vessels. Theirs are ceramic, but it's usually around 4, and that's how they dissipate the water as well. So this isn't just something that occurs here or in China, it occurs in Japan at the best of the tea houses that we went to. You don't have to do this at home. 2 cups is enough. But if you do this, you'll have better control of the final product. Pouring 175-degree water into the cup, that is 175, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then dissipate. Actually, here she's not dissipating as much as she's heating the cup. She's not dissipating yet.
Yeah.
She'll dissipate momentarily. Making sure everything is clean and heated. Here comes the 175
Yeah,
that
this
she
I
is
dissipate
going
steam.
to dissipate the steam. Not in a hurry, because remember, if you do it at a lesser temperature, that's going to be advantageous. Nice and steady, rhythmical tea rhythm. Japanese, again, when we went to the tea house, they exercise almost precisely the same rhythm.
This I learned, I copy same thing. Oh, okay. So I use the mug glass. They use the bowl. Okay. They use the 4. They really, I like the really so slowly. Really slowly. Okay. So right now it's 4. Which one is hot? This right now is hot. Okay.
Yeah, it forces you to slow down when you're set up this way. And the Japanese explained it to us that exact way. All right, she's going to get her bag of unity.
Yeah.
She's gonna put it in one of the heated cups.
And also, she's one more time, but I copy it.
One more time
Yeah.
to dissipate the steam.
It's a keeping out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Puts it into the cup, shakes the cup. Smells and then is gonna put her brewing water into this pot, which is fairly easy to control. So you don't pour directly on the leaves themselves. Don't worry, these are details. You aren't able to accomplish this detail or that detail, don't worry about it.
Have you found any studies out there that talk about the impact of steam on leaf growing? Since it sounds like at really high levels, this is definitely a thing, or that talks about the gives more details on just what that really means, what that impact is, because it's lowering temperature, what you're doing, but it is specifically dissipation of steam that you have
Yes,
discussed.
yes. So how in the world? So the question is, did Albert Einstein or any of the other famous scientists that we all know and love write a treatise on the effect of dissipating steam in terms of brewing?
Exactly.
I knew I got it. In fact, I've never seen one. However, in Japan, they used very much the same language that we use here. In China, they also use the same language. There must be some studies on this. I just never really have looked for those. There are studies whenever they're doing scientific experiments. And so they'll tell you, okay, with green tea, so there's a study about green tea which says if you bake it, in fact, the longer you bake, the better you'll be able to store it. Not you bake, but the farmer bakes. And it's a really fascinating study because they get these professional tasters, they bring the water to a certain temperature. They have this routine where you put X amount in your mouth and then you spit it out. And then you have certain attributes you're looking for and you rate them on a scale of 0 to 7. So yes, there are, and these are flavor attributes, by the way. And so there are studies about that, but they're linked actually usually to things like how do you store tea? And a specific study I've just not looked for, but I will see if I can find some.
If you like to send me, what I learned something too in that teacher.
So the timer went off. Tea master separated leaves, tea liquor. So let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at this. Oh, that looks green to me. And transparent. Let's see. Oh, maybe some trichomes in this as well. In fact, quite a few. Let's look at these leaves. They're big, they're long. This looks like a bud and 2 leaves to me. All right, let's enter the quality arena. So remembering when we enter the quality arena, we're looking for astringency, where in the mouth that occurs. We're looking for aftertaste, and we're looking for energetics. So what are energetics? Some people call it cha tea. I don't use that term because, we're Americans. if I say the chi of tea, you're thinking to yourself, the chi of tea. Let's see, where's the how-to book to find that? There is no how-to book to find that. Really, it is about the energetics. And by the way, one of you, in fact, two of you, brought up a very interesting point this week when you were visiting. And you said something about some teas have a bitter taste. I said, well, name them. And, you know, they're fumbling around trying to figure out, and these are regular customers, what tea might have a bitter taste. And they couldn't. And so then I asked, okay, define for me something that you feel has a bitter taste. And so again, more fumbling and more thinking. And then they said bitter melon. I said, that's great. Do any of these teas have that type of bitterness? Answer is no. They said no. By and large, at this level, bitterness is hard to find. Not impossible, hard. All right, this into the quality arena. So that was 170 degrees sip. You notice I was able to take more into the mouth, coat the tongue, think about how it's reacting with the tongue, think about astringency. That thing went down a certain way, I'm thinking about that. Am I getting an aftertaste? I'm thinking about that. Energetics usually comes down the road. It's usually not the first thing. Now, occasionally it is the first thing, but not with this. Energetics will come. Let me take a second one of these sips. Fundamentally greedy, understood, and see if I can verify what I believe. Oh, I can taste the selenium. Oh, just kidding. No, you cannot taste the selenium. So I don't expect to hear, yeah, I taste the selenium in my tea. The answer is no. We don't taste the selenium, but it's there. Okay, so it's your turn to brew. So you and the tea master are going to brew together. So as usual, tea master getting the water in good order, making sure the cups are heated. She takes bag number 3, opens it up, puts the tea leaves in the cup, shakes the cup. So you notice the previous time she poured in another container, but now she demonstrates you can pour directly in this if you're careful. And we set the time to minutes.
Is the notable selenium level for Unity in particular as a tea or green tea in general?
So I think I understand the question to be this. Is the selenium level, no, let me back up. Is selenium in general present to some degree in green tea, but here it's more present, or is this very specific to this green tea? It's very specific to this green tea because not so many areas have richness of that in the soil. And part of the situation is, remember, China's been cultivated for thousands of years. So what might have been there ages ago, in many places is no longer there. It's depleted. Here, though, because there hasn't been much development. The fields here were always very small. You don't have that as a situation. And further, it is my belief, although I don't know 100% sure, that this place has rich selenium in the soil and has had that for a long time and deep into the soil.
Are there other teas in the shop then that come from that region that maybe are not processed as greens?
Yes, great question. So how about red teas that are processed from nearby, like some of the Chiman family teas? And the answer would be yes, they're processed. What I don't understand, oh, I do understand. You know what? This is an easy answer. Yes, if the soil has selenium in it, those red teas will also have selenium in it. The other, your timer should have gone off. So you're separating the tea leaves from the tea liquor? Not in a hurry? And you're gonna evaluate the tea leaves and then go into the quality arena with the tea liquors. And think about what your tasting notes are in comparison to Whirlpool and Bulwark. Because again, 3 different areas, 3 different flavor profiles. Kind of cool. While you're thinking about that, part of that study I mentioned a short bit ago about baking and storage actually went into great detail about the difference between steam teas, the difference with the fried teas, and then the teas that are more heavily baked. And the real difference when you're baking is, for some reason, it brings out more of the volatiles, specifically the pyrroles. It brings out more of those. And as such, when you're baking, is what I'm talking about. And by the way, not you, when the farmer is baking. And as such, that helps keep it stable. When it is steamed versus fried, you tend to get more of the amino acids. And there's lots of reasons for that. A partial reason being that it's shaded, especially the best of the Japanese teas that are steamed. And when they're shaded, what happens to the chlorophyll? Most of it retains in the leaf. It doesn't change into amino acids and catechins. So that adds a different umami-ness. And that's why you get that with Japanese teas. As soon as you start frying, you end up with a different flavor profile. And you end up, if you fry and then don't bake, you end up with a tea that will deteriorate relatively quickly. So the Chinese over the years have been very clever about this. And almost every green tea they will bake because they know that it adds to storage time. And that's really important. All right, any impressions? Take your time. We're not in a race here. And while you're thinking, go ahead.
The steeped leaves have a sweet, round malt scent, while the tea liquor scent reminds me of the ocean.
Okay, so we've got an ocean tea liquor scent, umami, right? Whereas the leaves themselves have a sweet, round maltiness. And I like this observation because frequently we find leaf smell and eventual smell of tea liquor end up being two different things. Or taste of tea liquor, actually, is what I should say. And this is an example where that's true. The leaves of this thing are so attractive when you smell them. Great observation. Oh, and by the way, while we have this little brief pause, for those of you who think we're still jet lagged and we're not communicating at the high level we usually communicate, we haven't told you yet when the next tea tastings will be ready. I'm here to tell you right now, they're ready. Not the teas though themselves. The teas will be ready probably tomorrow or Monday at the latest. And I will send out an email regarding that. So, and you all have options to either have us send stuff to you or to come to the shop and pick it up as usual. And this time it'll go from this date all the way through September into the early part of October. That's what the list will encompass this time.
No other comments yet by participants, but having had the opportunity to take a swig, wow, that mouthfeel to me was the first thing that caught my attention. I'm wondering what the participants thought of the mouthfeel of this thing.
Mouthfeel is significant in this, especially when you think about the mouthfeel of the last couple of weeks. This has a certain quality to it that perhaps exceeds what you've felt the last couple of weeks.
A comment by a participant on flavor, and scent. The steep leaves had a bright vegetal smell to her, reminded her of cooked spinach. Also rich in selenium too, question mark.
Ah, great test question. And I have to say that my study is not up to par. So I think some spinach can be if it's grown in selenium rich soil or they use selenium fertilizer. However, I am not aware in the US as people advertising spinach as having a lot of selenium. I don't think it does compared to some of the other things that do have selenium. So this comment was about the vegetalness of the taste. There definitely is a vegetalness taste. And it's not much like spinach. So when you taste spinach, especially if it's been overdone a little bit, sometimes that smell in the tea or the spinach liquid contains a little bitterness. This does not. This has almost as if you made a comparison with spinach, like it was just right. In other words, it just turned into a steamed green that, wow, I look forward to eating this.
There is a dryness on the tongue that snuck up on one of the participants after a few sips.
Great comment. There is dryness on the tongue. For me, I detected mid-tongue. And it's very distinctive for me now. Again, what you said was absolutely correct, because when I first drank it, yeah, I got a little bit, but I didn't get what I'm getting now. Good. And the other thing that I'd like to know as you're tasting through this is, as the green teas go, do you have a preference for this or something else that we've had in this last 3 weeks? So when we went to this farm, the interesting thing about this particular farmer is that his his great-great-grandfather established the fields. And here there's this long heritage where the eldest son in the family line over and over took over learned the craft. And that's unusual. Not so much that a son takes over, that's not unusual at all. But usually it's not necessarily the eldest. You have, as the families were big in the past, you always had somebody in those families who said, yeah, I want to do this. And it usually wasn't the eldest. So that's something that's interesting in this particular farm.
Participant says his favorite of the three in this series is Bulwark.
Mm.
But he also notes he's had a crazy week, so his perception of unity may be off, and he also does like this tea we're tasting today.
Okay, so this commenter says that their favorite is Bulwark, and their state of mind, though, because of the wheat, may be influencing how they're tasting unity. So I like all three of these. So there's not one of these that I don't like. But this one, for me, because of the roundness, the smoothness, there are no bumps in this. There's nothing that's uneven about this. I really, really love this one for that balance and evenness from start to finish. And I find that a little bit unusual for some of the green teas we have. All right, as you're thinking more about this, the other thing to note about this environment, it's got about 230 days of fall in this area. So again, that's very different than the whirlpool. That's different than the bulwark. All of those are less fog. They have fog, but not to the degree that this has fog. So that is also influencing the flavor of this. All right, so let's go back to this other study I was talking about, because there's a few studies that I looked at this week that are interesting about green tea. One in particular is its alleged ability to inhibit the replication of the coronavirus. Does this mean it cures corona? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But in the test tube, it seems to inhibit the coronavirus from duplicating itself. How does it act in the body? We don't know. But there now is beginning to be a body of literature coming out of China, a little bit coming out of America as well, which is looking at this, because wouldn't it be nice if drinking more green tea made coronavirus not as potent as it's been over the years? So that's one of the interesting things I looked at this week. I did look at this article I mentioned before about storage. You can store green tea for a longer time if it's baked longer. And if it's baked longer, those smells, the aromas, will be more true to the original aroma for a significantly longer time. So this is something to consider when you're purchasing. Most tea purveyors will not be able to tell you the length of time that the tea has been baked, but a few will. If they've been to China or Japan, a few of them will be able to tell you that. And that's useful for you as a consumer to know, oh, okay, this has been baked a longer period of time. It's more likely to store well. The other thing is by season. So typically, the ones that you can store the longest are the spring picks, because they tried this experiment with spring, summer, and autumn picks. And again, used essentially the same parameters and the same judges in making judgments about the final result. And what they found was that the spring picks held up better, longer, and just had a more flavorful taste. So no wonder those things are so darn expensive.
Are there other green teas in here from the region where Unity, that particular stretch of land where Unity is grown?
So the question is, what other teas in here are from close to where Unity is? And that really would be the red teas, the chimanemas. No under that family, no other tea that I can remember is produced as a green tea there. Now, granted, we haven't been to every single farm, so there may be one or two very small varietals that also come from there. But to the best of our knowledge, it would be the red teas because that's what surrounds Unity.
On energetics, one of the participants says the energetics are calming but gently awakening.
So an energetics comment is calming but gently awakening. And I like this. I like this a lot because in general, green tea is awakening. It's stimulative because the caffeine acts more, it seems to interact in your system more vigorously, even though it doesn't have as much as the white tea. Yeah.
Another participant says, hey, I'm not generally a fan of green tea, but the evenness you mentioned makes this one quite enjoyable.
Yeah. So this commentator notes that the evenness of this green tea makes it hugely enjoyable. And this is a person who's not a fan of green tea. And that's a great comment. This is something, if somebody says, oh, I need a green tea, I hate green teas, this is the one to serve. All right. Well, we've come to the conclusion early this week. For a change, all of that talking that I usually do in the beginning is shortened. Really wanted you to go through this whole set of teas, Whirlpool, Bulwark, and Unity, and experience 3 different green teas from Anhui Province.
Another participant says, I feel the calming too, and it's opening my mind to the possibility of what tea names would be like if they were named by Samuel Jackson.
If they were named
by Samuel Jackson.
Ah, that's a great comment. What would the tea names look like if they were named by Samuel Jackson? Love this comment. They'd sure look a heck of a lot different than they look today. And that would be fun to do, to have him come in and rename the teas.
Right.
Great. Look forward to seeing you next week. Your responsibility this week is to stay healthy. We'll see you next week.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.